Commander Grolnok slammed his massive scaled fist onto the desk, causing the holographic display to flicker momentarily. The other Cthar officers in the room stiffened their postures, their slit-pupiled eyes fixed forward. They expect me to waste Academy resources on these mammals. Grolnok hissed, his forked tongue flicking in agitation. These soft-skinned creatures from some backwater death world. His second-in-command, Officer Zelther, shifted uncomfortably. The Federation Council has approved their admission to all elite training facilities, Commander. The Zargos Tactical Academy must comply. Grolnok's scales darkened in irritation. The Cthar were the undisputed masters of physical combat in the Federation. Their naturally armored bodies, superior strength, and disciplined military tradition had earned them the right to operate the Federation's most prestigious combat training facility. And now, they were expected to train humans, bipedal mammals with no natural armor, from a planet so hazardous it was classified as a death world by Federation standards. Have the maintenance crews reinforce the training equipment, Grolnok ordered, and adjust environmental controls to accommodate their fragile physiologies. Already done, Commander, Zelther replied. Though the humans have requested we maintain standard gravitational settings. Grolnok's crest rose in surprise. The Academy's gravitational field was calibrated to 1.3 times the Federation standard, optimal for Cthar physiology. They will break their brittle bones on the first day. The transport arrived the next morning. Grolnok watched from his observation post as the first contingent of human cadets disembarked. They were even less impressive in person, shorter than the average Cthar by nearly half a meter, with no scales, no claws, and skin that looked so thin and vulnerable that Grolnok wondered how they survived even minor impacts. Begin initial physical assessment, he ordered through his comm. Standard protocol, T7. The Cthar instructors led the humans to the primary training arena, a vast circular space with reinforced walls and adjustable terrain features. Grolnok followed, expecting to document their inevitable failure as justification to send them back. The first test was endurance running under increasing gravity. The Cthar cadets performed as expected, maintaining their pace until gravity reached 1.8 standard, then gradually slowing. The humans, surprisingly, kept pace longer than Grolnok had predicted, finally struggling at 1.9 standard. But what truly captured his attention was that none of them stopped. Even when their legs began to shake and their strange, watery sweat coated their bodies, they continued forward. Increased to 2.0, Grolnok ordered, wanting to see their breaking point. One human female, smaller than the others, fell to her knees at 2.0. But instead of signaling withdrawal, she crawled forward on all fours, continuing the circuit. That one should be removed, Grolnok stated. She has failed. The human instructor who had accompanied them, Major Reyes, if Grolnok remembered correctly, shook his head. With respect, Commander, none of my cadets have signaled withdrawal. Your protocols state that cadets must either signal withdrawal or become physically unable to continue. Grolnok's scales darkened further. The human was technically correct. The next day's assessment involved the jungle combat simulation. Grolnok had specifically selected this program because the dense vegetation, muddy terrain, and simulated indigenous predators played to Cthar strengths. His elite Cthar cadet unit, led by Subcommander Krask, was pitted against the humans in a capture-the-flag scenario. Grolnok observed from the control room, expecting a swift and decisive victory. The Cthar moved through the terrain with practiced efficiency, their natural camouflage blending with the undergrowth, their powerful bodies shoving aside obstacles. The humans, however, did not engage directly. Hours passed with no contact. Status report, Krask, Grolnok demanded over the comm. No visual on enemy forces, Commander. We are approaching their territory now. Security perimeter established. Advancing on 3 flanks. Grolnok nodded in approval. Standard Cthar protocol, secure, advance, overwhelm. The comm suddenly exploded with alerts. Ambush. Northwest quadrant under attack. Multiple casualties. The signal cut off. Grolnok watched in disbelief as the tactical display showed 5 Cthar signals blinking out in rapid succession. "What happened?" he demanded of the technician. "Pit traps, Commander, covered with vegetation. The humans lined them with sharpened stakes and covered the approaches with tripwires. Primitive, barbaric, but effective. The Cthar's superior weight had become a liability. Before Krask could reorganize, the humans launched a coordinated attack from multiple positions, using the dense canopy for cover, dropping from trees onto the Cthar, applying immobilization holds taught in the academy, but rarely used by the strength-reliant Cthar. Within 20 minutes, the simulation ended. The Cthar unit, outnumbering the humans 3-1, had been completely defeated. Their flag captured. 15 simulated casualties. 0 human losses. Later that evening, Grolnok observed the human cadets during their designated rest period. Instead of recuperating as expected, they engaged in additional physical activities, running laps around the compound, practicing combat maneuvers with each other, even lifting improvised weights. They voluntarily punished their bodies, Grolnok noted to Zelther. For what purpose? Major Reyes calls it training beyond the minimum, Commander. They claim their homeworld's harsh conditions require constant preparation. The final test of the week was the 48-hour survival assessment on Kelthrak Moon, a training ground with extreme temperature fluctuations and indigenous predators specifically selected for their aggression. Each team was dropped with minimal equipment and tasked with reaching an extraction point 50 kilometers away. The Cthar team, equipped with the latest survival gear, relied on their individual strength and resilience, moving quickly during daylight hours and establishing defensive positions during the dangerous night cycle. The humans took a different approach. Grolnok watched through surveillance drones as they immediately established clearly defined roles, some gathering specific plants and testing them, others constructing surprisingly sturdy shelters using only natural materials and the single utility knife they'd been allotted. Most surprisingly, they elected to travel primarily during the night cycle, when the most dangerous predators were active. Rather than avoid confrontation, they deliberately created diversions to draw predators away from their path, setting controlled fires and using improvised spears to hunt smaller creatures both for food and to leave scent trails that confuse the apex predators. When Grolnok's team reached the extraction point, the humans were already there, their shelter established, water collection systems created from tree bark and leaves, and a perimeter of early warning devices fashioned from local vegetation. "How long have you been here?" Grolnok demanded. Major Reyes checked a primitive mechanical timepiece on his wrist. "About 7 hours, Commander. We would have made better time, but Cadet Santos insisted on mapping 3 alternative routes for future reference." That evening, Grolnok sat alone in his quarters, recording his official assessment. His clawed fingers hovered over the terminal. The human cadets display inexplicable adaptive capabilities and seemingly illogical endurance, he dictated. Their physical strength is inferior, but they compensate through cooperation techniques and environmental manipulation that borders on instinctive. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Their strength is not in their bodies, but in their approach to challenges. They anticipate failure and prepare accordingly. Most disturbingly, they seem to have evolved to expect the worst possible conditions and still function effectively. He submitted the report, then added a personal note to his log. Perhaps there is something to learn from these Deathworlders after all. Supervisor Entity 7 Alpha observed the new human integration through its specialized sensory apparatus. As a Sigmian, an energy-based life form housed in a precision-engineered containment unit, it perceived the world as patterns, probabilities, and precise measurements. The human cadets entering the Pulsar Institute of Technology registered as chaotic thermal signatures, unpredictable movement patterns, and inefficient energy expenditure. Their biological processes leak heat and moisture at variable rates, 7 Alpha noted to its fellow supervisor. Their movements deviate from optimal paths by an average of 12.4%. Their decision-making processes appear to incorporate random variables. The Federation Council insists they have valuable perspectives to offer, replied Supervisor 4 Beta. Their planet's extreme conditions and technological development trajectory are considered unique. 7 Alpha adjusted its perception filters to better analyze the humans as they were introduced to the Institute's primary engineering simulation chamber, a massive room lined with holographic projectors and neural interfaces that could recreate any technological system in precise detail. Today's lesson: troubleshooting cascade failures in a quantum fusion reactor. The Cygnian cadets connected to the simulation interfaces with perfect efficiency, their energy patterns merging with the virtual systems. The mechanical Vartion cadets linked via direct neural feeds. The humans, however, had to use adapted interfaces that accommodated their limited biological neural structures. Begin simulation sequence. 7 Alpha instructed. Standard cascade failure pattern Omega 479. The virtual reactor systems began to degrade. Multiple interconnected systems failing in sequence. A test of both technical knowledge and algorithmic thinking. The Cygnian cadets immediately began running diagnostic protocols, following the precise troubleshooting hierarchy established in Federation technical manuals. The Vartians employed parallel processing to systematically isolate each failing component. The humans started conventionally enough, accessing diagnostic systems and reviewing alert logs. But as the simulation progressed, their methodology began to deviate from established protocols. One human female disconnected from her interface and physically walked around the simulation projection, examining the virtual components from multiple angles. Another began using a primitive analog device, a multimeter, according to the translation, to test connections that the diagnostic system had already cleared. Human designate Johnson, 7 Alpha, addressed one of the cadets. The diagnostic system has already verified power flow through that junction. Your manual verification is redundant and inefficient. The human looked up, its facial features arranging into what 7 Alpha's cultural database identified as a frown. With respect, Supervisor, I don't trust the diagnostic. There's a discrepancy between the reported power levels and the thermal signature I'm seeing on the coil housing. The discrepancy is within acceptable parameters, 7 Alpha stated. The human shook its head. On Earth, that kind of discrepancy often indicates microfractures in the containment shielding. The diagnostics miss it because they're calibrated for catastrophic failures, not gradual degradation. Before 7 Alpha could respond, another human approached the virtual reactor core and, to the Cygnian's alarm, appeared to place its sensory organ, its nose, near a coolant line. Cadet Garcia, that behavior is not in any approved protocol, 7 Alpha transmitted, its containment unit pulsing with agitation. Sorry, Supervisor, the human replied, not appearing particularly contrite. But I can smell etheric compound residue. There's definitely a leak in the secondary containment system. The simulation continued, with the human cadets employing increasingly unorthodox methods. They physically traced connections, listened to the acoustic signatures of the virtual machinery, and even began disassembling components that diagnostic reports had cleared. And remarkably, they began identifying failure points that the automated systems had missed. The primary error is not in the control systems, announced Human Johnson. It's physical degradation of this adapter coupling. He pointed to a seemingly intact component. The material has been subtly corrupted by radiation exposure. It's still conducting, but at reduced efficiency, creating the cascade effect we're seeing. 7 Alpha reviewed the simulation parameters. The human was correct. The scenario included a corrupted material component, an element 7 Alpha had computed as statistically negligible given the material's rated specifications. The diagnostics had not flagged it because, according to engineering standards, the component should not have failed in this manner. The cybersecurity simulation the following week revealed even more disturbing deviations from protocol. While the Cygnian and Vartion cadets constructed elaborate defensive algorithms and countermeasures, the humans focused on what they termed social engineering, essentially manipulating the behaviors of system users rather than the systems themselves. The most sophisticated security algorithm can be bypassed by convincing an authorized user to grant access, explained Human Rodriguez during the debrief. On Earth, approximately 78% of security breaches involve human error or manipulation. 7 Alpha observed the humans modifying their personal equipment, adding mechanical backup systems to digital devices, physically disconnecting communication arrays when not in use, even applying adhesive strips to secure components that the Cygnian considered entirely reliable. Your modifications reduce system efficiency by 7.9%, 7 Alpha noted to Human Shun during an equipment inspection. Yes, supervisor, but they increase system reliability by 22% under adverse conditions, the human replied. I'd rather have a slower system that works when I need it than a faster one that fails completely. The culmination of 7 Alpha's observations came unexpectedly during a minor but real incident. The environmental regulation system for the Institute's eastern wing began malfunctioning, causing temperature fluctuations that threatened sensitive equipment. The automated diagnostics could not identify the source of the problem. We have initiated Level 2 diagnostic protocols, 7 Alpha informed the assembled technical team. The system will self-correct within 47 minutes. Human Johnson raised a hand. Supervisor, I might know what's causing this. Yesterday, I was examining the secondary coolant manifold for our class project, and I noticed an unusual vibration in pipe junction E17. It might be a mechanical blockage, maybe sediment buildup in the filtration system. 7 Alpha considered this input to be low probability. The filtration system had a 99.997% reliability rating and was not flagged in any diagnostic. Your hypothesis lacks supporting diagnostic evidence, 7 Alpha stated. Permission to manually inspect the junction? Johnson requested, calculating that allowing the inspection would cause no harm and might provide a valuable learning opportunity about the limitations of human intuition. 7 Alpha granted permission. 20 minutes later, the human returned, holding a small container of crystalline material. Calcium carbonate buildup, Johnson explained. It was blocking the mechanical flow valve. The electronic components were working fine, but the physical valve couldn't fully open or close. That's why the diagnostics missed it. That evening cycle, 7 Alpha updated its analysis matrices, adding a new variable category, physical anomaly in manual intervention protocols. The Cygnian found itself categorizing human problem-solving methodology as an experience-based, multi-redundant backup system, rather than the inefficient chaos it had initially assessed. In its personal data storage, 7 Alpha made a note. Logic algorithms are only as effective as their physical implementation. Anticipating physical failure may be as important as logical perfection. Ambassador Ilara Vanya of the Sholari observed the new class of human diplomatic cadets with quiet concern. Her delicate, translucent fingers traced the patterns of ceremonial greeting automatically as she moved through the grand atrium of the cross-species diplomatic academy on Agora Station. The humans, by contrast, moved with an awkward energy, their gestures too broad, their voices too loud for the elegant surroundings. They attempted the traditional Sholari greeting patterns, but invariably misplaced a finger position or performed the movements in slightly incorrect sequences. Their empathic awareness is remarkably underdeveloped, Ilara commented to her assistant, Thelian. And yet they've achieved unified planetary governance in less than a century after developing faster-than-light travel. Puzzling. Perhaps their methods differ from ours, Ambassador, Thelian suggested, his own empathic tendrils gently pulsing with curiosity. Perhaps, Ilara conceded, though skepticism colored her thoughts. The Sholari had long been the Federation's premier diplomats precisely because of their natural empathic abilities and their cultural emphasis on harmony and refined communication. Humans, with their direct approaches and unpredictable emotional states, seemed ill-suited for delicate interspecies negotiations. The first simulation was scheduled for that afternoon, a trade negotiation with a notoriously duplicitous merchant species. Alara took her place in the observation chamber alongside other instructors as the cadets entered the simulated environment. The Sholari cadets began the exercise as expected, establishing rapport through careful application of non-threatening body language and initial concessions designed to build trust. The Vraldiex cadets employed their species' methodical approach, carefully documenting every statement for later analysis. The humans, however, immediately deviated from protocol. Your initial offer shows a profit margin of approximately 35%, stated human Nakamura bluntly to the simulated merchant, bypassing the customary 20 minutes of social preamble. Our intelligence suggests your acquisition costs were significantly lower than industry standard. We're prepared to accept a 15% margin, not the 25% you're proposing. Alara stiffened. Such directness was considered highly offensive in most diplomatic contexts. Yet instead of terminating the negotiation, the simulated merchant, programmed with realistic psychological responses, seemed taken aback, then intrigued. More surprising was when human Santiago deliberately introduced humor into the proceedings, self-deprecating comments about human inexperience in space trade that somehow diffused a tense moment when the merchants were caught in a deliberate misrepresentation. They're using calculated informality as a strategic tool, Thelian observed with surprise. The merchants expected formal diplomatic approaches they could manipulate. The human unpredictability is disorienting them. The second simulation, a first contact scenario with a reclusive, highly territorial species, proved even more revealing. The standard protocol, a carefully orchestrated series of non-threatening approaches with ritualized communication attempts, failed completely. The simulated species retreated deeper into their territory and refused further contact. When the human team took their turn, they employed an entirely different approach. They established a small camp at a respectful distance from the species' territory and simply waited. They engaged in visible but non-threatening activities, preparing food, performing maintenance on equipment, occasionally playing what they called music. They made no direct approach at all. What exactly is their strategy? Alara asked, genuinely puzzled. I believe they're allowing themselves to be observed, Thelian replied, demonstrating they're not a threat without forcing interaction. After several simulated days, members of the reclusive species began observing the humans from concealment. The humans pretended not to notice, but left small food items at the edge of their camp before retreating to their shelter. Eventually, one of the simulated aliens approached, examined the offering, and left something of their own in return. Fascinating, Alara murmured. They're establishing contact through a gift economy rather than formal diplomatic protocols. Throughout the exercises, Alara noticed the humans' remarkable ability to read nonverbal cues across species. They seemed to intuitively grasp when simulated aliens were uncomfortable, defensive, or deceptive, despite vast physiological differences. This ability sometimes exceeded even the Sholari's limited empathic sensitivity, which typically required some degree of psychological similarity to function effectively. The final simulation presented a hostage crisis, a radical faction holding diplomatic personnel captive. The Sholari cadets attempted delicate negotiations, offering face-saving compromises and appeals to shared values. After 6 hours, they achieved the release of half the hostages but reached a stalemate. The human approach proved radically different. After a brief attempt at conventional negotiation, human Ramirez, who had been analyzing the faction leader's communications, proposed an unexpected strategy. This leader doesn't want compromise, Ramirez explained during planning. Based on his rhetorical patterns and historical analogs from similar Earth groups, he's seeking legitimacy through confrontation. I suggest we deny him that legitimacy while simultaneously offering him a way to claim victory. Their approach was shockingly direct. They issued a clear, limited threat, precisely targeted at the faction leader's personal assets rather than his cause. Simultaneously, they offered him a way to frame capitulation as a moral victory by suggesting his mercy was demonstrating the moral superiority of his position. This approach carries a 72% risk of catastrophic failure, the simulation's AI calculated. Yet it worked. The hostage-takers, confronted with a response outside their psychological preparation, released the remaining hostages within hours. In her private quarters that evening, Ilera found herself researching human history, particularly their extensive experience with conflict resolution under adverse conditions. Their historical records revealed millennia of complex negotiations conducted without the benefit of empathic abilities, forcing them to develop sophisticated models of psychological analysis and strategic empathy. They've evolved diplomatic strategies based on confrontation and resolution rather than continuous harmony, she noted in her personal log. Their methods are unrefined, often uncomfortable, but undeniably effective in crisis situations where traditional approaches reach their limits. She hesitated before adding, "Perhaps harmony is not always the only path. Sometimes decisive action based on deep understanding of conflict itself may be necessary." Admiral Zorbal of the Regellian Fleet Command viewed the upcoming joint exercise with thinly veiled irritation. His exoskeleton plates clicked softly as he reviewed the roster of ships under his command for the Federation's annual Unity maneuvers. "Human cadets have been assigned to 7 vessels in our formation," he noted to his executive officer, Commander Varick. "Implement Protocol 87C for close monitoring and integration limitations." "Understood, Admiral," Varick responded, his own plates shifting to the formal attention position. "Though I must note that the cadets from Earth have completed the required preliminary training with adequate performance metrics." "Adequate is insufficient aboard a Regellian battle group," Zorbal replied sharply. "Their unpredictable tendencies and disregard for established tactical doctrines represent a potential liability." The Regellians prided themselves on their militaristic precision and adherence to carefully formulated battle plans. Their rise to prominence within the Federation Defense Force was built on their ability to execute complex fleet maneuvers with mechanical precision and unwavering discipline. Improvisation was discouraged. Adherence to optimal strategies was the cornerstone of their approach. The Unity maneuvers began the following day, a massive simulation involving over 50 vessels divided into opposing forces. Zorbal commanded the defense force, tasked with repelling an aggressor fleet using unconventional tactics and electronic warfare. "All vessels, maintain formation Delta 7, Zorbal ordered as the exercise commenced. "Sensor arrays at maximum sensitivity. Communication channels on encrypted band frequency." The first attack came 6 minutes later, a coordinated electronic warfare assault that disrupted primary communication channels across the fleet. Standard Regellian protocol dictated maintaining current positions while technical teams restored communications, a process expected to take approximately 4 minutes. Zorbal was monitoring the situation when a message arrived via an auxiliary channel, a low-frequency transmission system considered obsolete by modern standards. "Sir, this is Lieutenant Rodriguez aboard the destroyer Indomitable. Human cadets have established backup communications using low-band frequency modulation. We're also implementing light-based signaling between nearby vessels for crucial tactical updates." Before Zorbal could respond, tactical displays showed the enemy force launching a surprise flanking maneuver, one that would have caught his fleet in disarray during the communications blackout. Instead, thanks to the crude but functional backup systems, his vessels were already beginning to reposition. The humans anticipated communication failure, Varick noted with surprise. They prepared alternative systems without being ordered to do so. The next disruption came when the simulation registered heavy damage to the light cruiser Vigilant. Standard doctrine called for damaged vessels to withdraw to the rear echelon for protection. "Admiral, Vigilant reporting," came another transmission. "Human engineering cadets have implemented emergency repairs bypassing standard safety protocols. We've restored partial weapons functionality and maneuvering capabilities." requesting permission to maintain forward position as mobile defensive platform. Zorbal's plates clicked in agitation. Denied. Fall back to designated safe coordinates as per regulation. Sir, Varric interjected quietly, the enemy formation has a vulnerability on their port flank. If Vigilant maintains position, they could provide critical covering fire for our counterattack. Reluctantly, Zorbal modified his order. Vigilant, maintain position, but prioritize defensive operations only. No offensive maneuvers. Later, in the tactical planning chamber, as Rigelian strategic computers struggled to predict the enemy's next move, their algorithms overwhelmed by the intentionally chaotic attack patterns. A human cadet named Hernandez offered an unexpected insight. Admiral, I believe they're setting up for a false retreat followed by a concentrated assault on our command vessels, the cadet stated. The pattern resembles historical Earth naval tactics, specifically the Battle of Trafalgar and the Jutland maneuvers. Your pattern recognition algorithm lacks sufficient data points, Zorbal dismissed. Our tactical computers show a 73% probability of a direct frontal assault. 6 minutes later, the enemy fleet executed exactly the maneuver the human had predicted, a feigned retreat followed by a sharp turn and concentrated attack on the command vessels. Only the presence of the partially repaired Vigilant at a critical junction prevented Zorbal's flagship from being surrounded and destroyed in the simulation. The makeshift communications system established by the human cadets proved to be the only functional coordination mechanism during the critical minutes of the counterattack, as the enemy employed advanced jamming techniques against all standard channels. During the post-exercise debriefing, Zorbal found himself in the uncomfortable position of acknowledging the effectiveness of methods he had initially dismissed as primitive and unreliable. The exercise has revealed potential gaps in our standard operating procedures, he admitted to his assembled officers. While our primary systems and protocols remain fundamentally sound, the integration of redundant, low-technology backup measures may provide valuable fail-safes in unpredictable combat scenarios. He paused, mandibles working as he forced himself to continue. I am therefore ordering a comprehensive review of our emergency protocols, with specific attention to implementing training in improvisational thinking and manual operation of critical systems. In his private tactical journal that evening, Zorbal made a reluctant entry. The perfect plan inevitably encounters imperfect conditions. Perhaps the ability to function effectively when all optimal systems fail is as valuable as the systems themselves. Senior Coordinator Lyra Shin scrolled through the collection of reports on her terminal, a pattern emerging that was too significant to ignore. As a member of the neuter species, evolved specifically for impartial analysis and coordination between Federation entities, she was responsible for synthesizing educational data from all major training institutions. Computer, display temporal analysis of assessment metrics for human exchange cadets across all primary Federation academies. Past 12 months, she instructed. The holographic display before her desk rearranged into a striking pattern. Initial assessments showing below-average predictions, followed by sharp upward trajectories, culminating in performance ratings that, in many cases, exceeded those of species traditionally dominant in their respective fields. Most intriguing, she murmured, her multifaceted eyes shifting spectrum to enhance perception of the data patterns. Computer, correlate instructor assessment language pre- and post-training periods. The results were equally revealing. Initial reports contained terms like undisciplined, primitive methodology, concerning unpredictability, and excessive risk tolerance. Final assessments, however, showed a dramatic shift. Innovative approach, effective adaptation, valuable perspective, and perhaps most telling, recommended for expanded integration. From her position in the Federation Education and Training Council, Lyra had a unique perspective on how the traditional powers were responding to the relative newcomers from Earth. The humans had joined the Federation only 30 years earlier, after their surprisingly rapid development of independent faster-than-light travel had forced the established species to acknowledge their existence. Her communication panel chimed. It was Commander Grolnok from the Zargos Tactical Academy. Coordinator Shin, the Kthar began without preamble. I wish to formally request an expansion of the Human Cadet Exchange Program. Their unconventional combat methodologies have proven instructive. Lyra noted the carefully neutral phrasing. Your initial assessment was considerably less enthusiastic, Commander. Grolnok's scales darkened slightly, a Kthar expression of embarrassment. Initial observations were incomplete. Their physical endurance and tactical adaptability compensate for their lack of natural defenses. My instructors have begun incorporating human guerrilla warfare principles into our advanced combat courses. Similar communications arrived throughout the day. From Supervisor Entity 7 Alpha, human problem-solving methodologies demonstrate 37% higher effectiveness in scenarios involving cascading physical component failures. Request permission to establish joint Signian-human technical troubleshooting protocols. From Ambassador Ilera Vanya, the diplomatic corps has benefited significantly from human crisis negotiation techniques. While unconventional, their approach to high-stakes scenarios has proven remarkably effective. We have initiated a research program in human psychological analysis methods. From Admiral Zorbal, the integration of primitive backup systems and manual override protocols, as demonstrated by human cadets, has resulted in a 22% increase in fleet resilience during communication disruption scenarios. Implementation across all vessels is recommended. As the reports continued to arrive, Lyra began compiling common threads for her presentation to the Council. The picture emerging was remarkably consistent. Humans possessed an extraordinary ability to function in harsh, unpredictable environments. They consistently prepared for worst-case scenarios and system failures. They maintained proficiency in outdated methods that proved valuable when advanced systems failed. They demonstrated exceptional team cohesion and sharp psychological analysis of opponents. Most importantly, they brought a perspective forged by evolution on a planet that, by Federation standards, should never have produced a sentient species at all. Earth's high gravity, atmospheric composition, temperature extremes, geological instability, and aggressive ecosystem had created a species that expected hardship as the normal state of existence. The Emergency Education Council convened 3 days later. Representatives from all major Federation species gathered in the circular chamber, their attention focused on Lyra as she presented her findings. Distinguished representatives, she began, the data is unequivocal. The Human Exchange Program has produced benefits far beyond initial projections. Their unique evolutionary background has gifted them with survival adaptations that complement our established methodologies in unexpected ways. She displayed images from various academies, Kthar warriors practicing unarmed combat techniques developed by humans, Signian entities implementing physical redundancy systems, Sholari diplomats studying Earth conflict history, Rigelian fleet exercises running total systems failure. Simulations. The harsh conditions of Earth, what we classified as a death world, have produced a species that approaches problems from a fundamentally different perspective, Lyra continued. They assume failure rather than success as their baseline. They maintain proficiency in multiple methods rather than relying solely on optimal solutions. They prepare for the worst while working toward the best. Commander Grolnok, representing the Kthar, rose to speak. My initial assessment of humans was incorrect. Their physical weakness has forced them to develop alternative strengths, endurance, adaptability, and tactical innovation that our stronger warriors had never needed to consider. Supervisor 7, Alpha's containment unit pulsed with agreement. Their insistence on manual backup systems and physical redundancy appeared inefficient until we encountered scenarios where ideal conditions were not maintained. Their approach to technical problem-solving incorporates failure expectations that our optimization algorithms had not considered relevant. Ambassador Ilera added her perspective. Humans have developed sophisticated psychological analysis techniques to compensate for their lack of natural empathic abilities. Their diplomatic approaches, while sometimes disconcertingly direct, demonstrate a nuanced understanding of conflict dynamics that complements our harmony-focused methodologies. Even Admiral Zorbal, mandibles clicking in reluctant acknowledgement, offered his support. The integration of human primitive backup systems has enhanced fleet resilience. Their ability to function effectively when primary systems fail represents a tactical advantage we had not fully appreciated. The Council's conclusion was unanimous. The Human Exchange Program would be significantly expanded, and a special committee would be established to study and integrate human survival and adaptation philosophy into all military, technical, and diplomatic training programs throughout the Federation. 3 months later, a new group of human cadets arrived at the Zargos Tactical Academy. Commander Grolnok greeted them personally in the arrival bay. Where once his posture would have conveyed dismissive tolerance, now he stood at formal attention. His scales brightened in the Cthar expression of respect. "Welcome to Zargos," he addressed them. "Your predecessors have changed our understanding of combat readiness. We look forward to learning from you." At the Pulsar Institute, Supervisor Entity 7 Alpha had modified the primary engineering simulation chamber to incorporate physical component manipulation alongside digital interfaces. Humans have demonstrated the critical importance of physical verification, it explained to bewildered Cygnian students. Algorithms are only as reliable as their physical implementation. In the Cross-Species Diplomatic Academy, Ambassador Ilera Vanya introduced a new required course, Conflict Resolution Under Adverse Conditions, the Earth Model. Her opening lecture acknowledged, traditional harmony-based approaches sometimes fail when confronting existential threats. Human crisis management techniques offer valuable alternatives when traditional methods reach their limits. Even the Rigelian Fleet Command had implemented changes. Admiral Zorbal personally oversaw the integration of manual backup systems and primitive communication alternatives aboard all vessels. The most sophisticated technology remains vulnerable to unexpected failures, he instructed his officers. Proficiency in basic methods ensures mission continuation when optimal systems are compromised. Throughout the Federation, a new understanding was taking root, a perspective brought by the unlikely inhabitants of a planet too harsh, by all reasonable standards, to produce a spacefaring civilization at all. Yet it was precisely those harsh conditions that had forged humanity's greatest strength, the ability to expect disaster, prepare for failure, and still function effectively when the worst occurred. In the central hall of the Federation Education Council, Coordinator Lyra Shin added a new inscription to the ancient wall of wisdom that guided their approaches to knowledge. From the harshest worlds come the most valuable lessons, not of perfection, but of persistence. Below it, in smaller script, was added a human proverb that had rapidly gained popularity throughout Federation space. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. The next generation of Federation officers, from the towering Cthar to the energy-based Cygnians, from the empathic Sholari to the disciplined Rigelians, grew up with a new appreciation for the strange bipedal creatures from that improbable Deathworld. They studied human history, analyzed human adaptability, and incorporated human backup methodologies into their training. When a new group of human cadets arrived at a Federation facility, they were no longer met with skepticism or condescension. Instead, they encountered careful observation, respectful curiosity, and an unspoken acknowledgement. We have much to learn from these survivors of the Deathworld. In the officers' lounge at Zargos Academy, Commander Grolnok shared a drink with Major Reyes, the human instructor. "Your cadets performed admirably in today's exercise," the Cthar acknowledged. "The improvised shelter construction technique will be added to our standard survival protocols." Reyes smiled. "On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you grow up on a planet trying to kill you, you learn to work with whatever's available." At the Pulsar Institute, Supervisor 7 Alpha observed a mixed team of Cygnian and human engineers troubleshooting a complex propulsion system. The Cygnians ran diagnostics and analyzed data patterns while the humans physically inspected connections and listened to the engine's acoustic signature. The integration of algorithmic and physical verification methodologies increases accuracy by 43%. 7 Alpha noted with satisfaction. A most efficient combination. In the diplomatic simulation chambers of Agora Station, Ambassador Ilera watched as Sholari and human cadets practiced crisis negotiations. The Sholari provided empathic insight into the emotional states of the simulated hostage takers, while the humans developed pragmatic response strategies based on historical precedents. Your species' extensive experience with conflict gives you insights we lack, Ilera admitted to a human instructor. Our empathic abilities can tell us what others feel, but your historical perspective helps predict what they might do next. Admiral Zorbal, reviewing fleet exercise data in his command center, grudgingly acknowledged the effectiveness of the new integrated approach. His vessels now carried sophisticated communication arrays alongside primitive backup systems. His officers trained in both precision maneuvers and improvised responses. The perfect strategy rarely survives first contact with the enemy, he told his assembled captains, quoting a human military principle that had gained remarkable traction throughout Regelian command structures. Prepare accordingly. In her office at Federation headquarters, Coordinator Lyra Shin reviewed the latest data from the expanded exchange program. Human cadets were now present at every major training facility, their unique perspective incorporated into standardized curricula across disciplines. More significantly, she noted the Federation's operational readiness metrics had improved by a substantial margin. Crisis response times were faster. Problem-solving effectiveness had increased. Survival rates in simulated catastrophic scenarios were markedly higher. Computer, new entry, she dictated. The integration of Earth's survival methodologies has yielded unexpected dividends across all service branches. The Deathworld perspective, preparing for failure rather than assuming success, has addressed a critical blind spot in Federation training protocols. She paused, considering her final observation carefully. Perhaps the greatest strength of the Federation has always been its diversity, not merely of biology or culture, but of perspective and approach. The human contribution reminds us that there are many paths to resilience, and that what we once dismissed as primitive may, under the right circumstances, prove to be precisely what we need to survive. Throughout Federation space, a new appreciation spread for the strange, soft-skinned mammals from that improbable world. They lacked natural armor, possessed no extraordinary sensory abilities, and had achieved spaceflight despite, or perhaps because of, evolving on a planet that seemed designed to destroy them. Every alien species had indeed learned the same lesson about Deathworld Cadets. Never underestimate those who evolved expecting disaster as their natural state. Their strength lies not in physical prowess, but in methodology and mindset, in the ability to face the worst while still working toward the best.